Hello, and welcome to the Get Lean and Eat Clean podcast. My name is Brian Grin. I'm a certified health coach, trainer, and author. And this podcast is for middle-aged men and women looking to optimize their health and get their bodies back to what it once was 10 to 15 years ago. I will give you simple, actionable items to get long-term sustainable results. Thanks for listening and enjoy the show. All right. Welcome to the Get Lean, Eat Clean podcast. My name is Brian Grin. Hope you had a great weekend. Happy Tuesday if you're listening to this on Tuesday. And hopefully you listened to my last interview with Dr. Bill Campbell. Tons of great information around fat loss, optimal protein requirements, preserving and gaining muscle, which you all know how important that is as we age. And check out his Instagram handle, Bill Campbell, PhD. I put a link in the show notes, and that's episode 167. So definitely check that one out. And today I wanted to touch on the comparison between fasting and doing some type of intermittent fasting protocol, along with the differences between calorie restriction. And if you're listening to some of my interviews, you know, they both can be effective for weight loss. But the question is, what are some of the other benefits that intermittent fasting can maybe provide that, you know, calorie restriction doesn't? And I was prompted by this study that I'm going to pull up right here, was recently done, actually. Yeah. August of 2022. So this was done, and it was done on 28 Norwegian adults, and it comparing what's called an intermittent energy restriction, what they called, versus a continuous energy restriction, which is sort of an interesting way to term that. Continuous one meaning you can eat all day, you're just eating in a restricted state. And an intermittent one, obviously, where you have almost only like a small window to eat your food, and comparing the differences between the two. So they completed a 12-week diet-induced weight loss. And what I loved about this study was not only did it compare weight loss in both groups, but it also took inflammatory markers, mainly cytokines and chemokines, and compared the differences. Because, you know, one of the reasons I'm a big proponent of fasting is, yeah, it can help with weight loss and getting that body set weight down. But the hormonal differences between that and just restricting calories. And some of the hormonal differences is obviously getting insulin down, growth hormone up. There's been studies on that, and noradrenaline up. And noradrenaline, if you think of it ancestrally, we went periods of time without food, right? Well, we needed to find our next hunt. If we just sort of, you know, people think if they start fasting that they're going to have no energy, but eventually that's not true. If you sort of train the body to get used to being in a fasted state, not all the time, obviously, but sometimes you will find that you'll have more energy in the long term. But either way, so that, you know, you think of calorie restriction, yeah, that can be a tool that could be used for weight loss. But what about the hormonal adaptations regarding fasting and getting into ketosis as well? Okay, I don't think you need to be in long-term ketosis. If you listen to my interview with Dr. Benazati, and he has a book called Keto Flex, where he talks about coming in and out of ketosis. But I do think it's important to, if you've never done it, try to get into ketosis, because that'll stimulate lipolysis, which is breaking down fat for energy. So either way, those are some of the reasons why I do love fasting versus just doing a calorie restrictive diet. And this study proved me right, I guess, to some degree, in the fact that when it did a 12-week study on these 28 individuals and measured the plasma levels of 13 inflammatory markers, found that there was a pronounced reduction in these inflammatory markers from fasting versus just doing calorie restriction. About, 3 times as many. So that's huge. That's a huge win for intermittent fasting and as they call it, intermittent energy restriction. as compared to continuous energy strategy, sort of like those two names. And it says it could be advantageous to reduce inflammation associated with obesity and consequently improve insulin resistance, regardless of the amount of weight loss. Comparing, saying intermittent energy restriction had a leg up on that. And so this study, which I'll put a link in the show notes, sort of hammered that home from this 12-week study. And so they did, I believe their fasting protocol was an alternate day. But alternate day, some people like to do, a 16-8 or a 20/4. But this one did alternate day and versus, just calorie restricting every day and seeing how beneficial it was to lowering these sort of inflammatory markers that are obviously can lead to a lot of bad health results. And so that was the conclusion of this study. And yeah, I mean, I think the bottom line is, you have to take a look at what works for you. But also, these studies are great, but I think there is a little bit of a self-experimentation that needs to be done as well. Some people do better on fasting than others. But either way, you want to ease your way into it. And I talk about that in the journal. I have a book coming out, which is going to touch on that as well. So I just wanted to touch on this study and how, there is, yes, can you lose weight by restricting calories per se? Yes. But what are some of the positive effects and the hormonal effects, and this showing that you can reduce inflammation better off doing some type of intermittent energy restriction as opposed to a continuous energy restriction as they state in the study. So hopefully I sort of just clarified that, made it easy to understand. If you have any questions, you can email me, brian@briangrin.com. And hopefully you enjoyed this micro podcast, and I will talk to you on Friday with another great interview. Thanks for listening to the Get Lean, Eat Clean podcast. I understand there are millions of other podcasts out there, and you've chosen to listen to mine, and I appreciate that. Check out the show notes at briangrin.com for everything that was mentioned in this episode. Feel free to subscribe to the podcast and share it with a friend or family member that's looking to get their body back to what it once was. Thanks again, and have a great day.